Hi, welcome to the MacIver Report. I'm Bill Osmolsky, Content Director for the MacIver Institute. I am joined by my colleague,
Mike Lucas, Policy Analyst.
And today is May 9th, 2025. We are going to run through three major subject areas because there's definitely been a theme going on lately with Wisconsin political news. So, number one, we're going to talk about the budget. We're going to talk about Governor Evers' or the left's approach to immigration enforcement here in Wisconsin. Then we're going to touch briefly on some of the lawsuits that Governor Evers has been hitting the Trump administration with as part of his unrestricted political lawfare campaign. So let's get into it. First up is the state budget. So a lot going on. We are in full budget mode now in Madison. Right now, the Joint Committee on Finance, they've just started their executive hearings yesterday. And that process usually just starts with the basic, what is the cost to continue? And then they knock out a lot of the really easy ones. They didn't even have any proposals. They just took baseline funding adjustments for those. So none of the really exciting debate has happened yet. That will be unfolding over the next several weeks, and we'll talk about that in a minute. So next step, they'll continue having these executive hearings until the budget is completely finalized. The executive hearings, by the way, that's when they're actually writing the budget. They're approving each section of the budget, and when they're done, that's going to go to the Assembly and Senate floors for the full vote. Cannot be amended on the floor. The last step, the most previous step was public hearings. Those just got wrapped up last week. They had 4 of them in 4 different communities around the states. So we have a big budget overview report on our website that I strongly encourage everyone to check out because it really breaks down this very complicated topic in very easily understood sections. So it's a great crash course in state budgeting, and it also explains why that's important for you to know. Anyway, so we make budget recommendations. We've been doing this for a long time, so we know, what lawmakers should be putting in the budget, what they shouldn't be putting in the budget. We kind of have a take it or leave it attitude because they usually leave it, but it's always good to let them know how they're screwing this up. So one of the most, so starting off, and this isn't all the recommendations, you check them all out in the overview piece, but in that piece, I wrote it would be wise for the Joint Committee on Finance to await the outcome of 2 state Supreme Court cases. So one of these was, so right now, Governor Evers he's been suing the legislature over their constitutional authorities. He's been doing his best to just strip them of all their powers under the Constitution. So one of those was, the first one was the legislature sued him because he violated the Constitution's line item veto requirements. But the Supreme Court here is run by liberals, so they said, nah, he's okay. He could cross off digits and make new numbers. He did this in the last budget to craft a 402-year policy where where funding for public schools will increase every year automatically. One increase on top of the other for the next 400 years. So that definitely is going to impact how they write the budget, the Republican lawmakers. The other case is still floating out there. It's an administrative rules case. So I've explained this plenty of times, but assuming this is everyone's first time listening to us. So when the legislature writes a law, they usually leave it somewhat open-ended. A lot of the technical details they just leave up to the bureaucrats to really translate what the policy was in the law to make it actually enforceable. So lawmakers write the law, governor signs it into law, bureaucrats then take the law and they write up rules and regulations on how to enforce it. I mean, this could be things like, if it's a clean air law, for example, it's the bureaucrats going to say, what the actual standards are. And that's pretty much every single law that comes out of the Capitol goes to the bureaucrats for them to figure out how to actually execute it. Now, those rules and regulations are also essentially laws in themselves, and the legislature is a lawmaking branch of government. Everything that those bureaucrats write goes back to the legislature, and they say yay or nay. Either yes, you met our intent, that looks good. Let's put that into those rules and regulations into effect, or no, you completely missed the boat. Go back and try again. Governor Evers is suing them, saying, "Hey, this is violating the separation of powers." If he wins that lawsuit, that means that the bureaucrats will essentially be able to write any rules or regulations, de facto laws, without any legislative oversight at all. That's significant for the budget, because if Evers wins that case, he's almost sure to win it, but that's just, it's still an open question. If he wins that, the lawmakers are going to want to rewrite certain parts of that budget to kind of curb the bureaucracy's ability to just essentially write and execute those laws. So they're going to want to deny the bureaucracy the resources they need to really to just go wild on this. So that's something you kind of want to wait to see how the Supreme Court's going to rule before you jump in. So the next prediction was JFC will knock out the low-hanging fruit first. Non-controversial agencies with low funding requests. Bingo, hit that one right in the head. They'll save the more complicated ones for last. Probably public instruction will be last. So we'll check back in to see how well I predicted that one. And then my other prediction, we always argue for reduced government spending and to start at zero-based budgeting or performance-based budgeting. The legislature instead always insists on its cost to continue budgeting. So wherever we left off is where they continue, or incremental-based budgeting is what that's called. So you don't start when you're writing the budget. You don't start with a blank sheet of paper. You start with your last budget and you just add to that. That's exactly where we're at right now. So if this follows historic trends, they're going to increase the total spending by 4 to 11%. And the budget will include a sizable tax cut. So Governor Evers can run on that because Republicans are kind of setting him up for success right now.
Yep. And he can also run on the fact that he got more funding somehow.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
You're right.
It's increasing the budget.
Yeah, so everything that he says I want to spend more money on, he might not get what he actually asked for. He might not get the policies, but yeah, he'll be able to hang his hat on that too, for sure. So, some of the budget stories that we've had over the past couple weeks, we've got JFC bosses look to Evers-proof the next state budget. So this is about that line item veto I was just talking about. They need to get really creative on how they write this budget to avoid Governor Evers just going in with his pen and crossing out various punctuation marks and digits to make an entirely new and unbalanced budget.
Yep. And I think the best way to do that is not to put any numbers.
Yep.
Type out every number, right? Spell it.
Yeah, it's going to really suck for, people that want to just, analyze the budget like us.
Yes. Yeah.
But
well, you could put that in the summary sections, right? But in the actual
you're right.
And whatnot.
Yeah, you're right,
because those don't have the effect of law.
Yeah, so Legislative Fiscal Bureau will still be able to produce the budgets and tables
so
and things.
LFB could do all the heavy lifting for us.
Yeah, and they probably will have to. But expect a budget where it doesn't actually say 2026. It'll say the year 2026 in all letters. All right, so and just so people know that the budget, the current budget that we're in is $100 billion. That is the number that JFC introduced yesterday. So the budget is currently for the next 2 years is currently going to be $100 billion. So I guess there's not going to be any cuts. That's a shame. But I guess the Republicans on Joint Finance think that everything is perfect about the current budget, so that just keep plowing ahead. All right, so Schoemann, we need to be honest about size and cost of UW system. So Josh Schoemann is running for governor. He threw his hat in the ring, I think, last week. And so obviously he was doing the talk radio circuit last week. He was on WISN on Wednesday. And talking specifically about the UW system. Quote, look at the proposal in the governor's budget for the UW system. It makes no sense. We're going to have less kids attending the university in the next 10 years than we do now, and spending is going through the roof. Just so everyone knows, the current budget spends $2.5 billion of general purpose revenue. That's our tax dollars for the UW system, and Governor Evers wants to bump that up to $3.4 billion. Mike, you wrote the MacIver budget analysis on the UW system. What is your big thoughts and takeaways on this?
Yeah, big takeaway is privatize the UW system, because this is just, if ultimately you're just going to keep clashing over these ideological issues that persist throughout, the public system, right? The conservatives are pissed because their kids don't get accepted, and they do get accepted, they're being indoctrinated, and they become Marxists, and then they lose their kids. And then liberals, leftists, rather, complaining that we're being hamstrung or hamstringed, whatever the past tense is for that. We can't teach the way we want to. This is interference with freedom of. What's the term? Freedom of speech, or
academic freedom.
Academic freedom.
Yeah.
Thanks. So, yeah, I mean, you just need to cut it outright. The current budget, current biennial, allocation for UW is $13.7 billion. The governor's request added $2.8 billion, all funds, and about.
So that's tuition. That's federal
Yes.
government grants. That's.
Yeah. So it was something like $600 billion of that was GPR, and about half of that, Evers said that UW could do whatever they want with it. So a $300 billion slush fund, it's earmarked as unallocated reserve. It entails like huge wage and benefit increases for UW faculty and staff. Their raises far outpace price inflation every single year. Like they're doing very, very well for themselves.
Yeah, so I just want to point out that this is one of those rare situations where we can reach across the aisle. So for all of our liberal listeners, this is a lesson for both conservatives and liberals, and that is when the government gives you money, the government gets to tell you what to do. Mm-hmm. So I can understand the UW's desire to get $3.5 billion, no strings attached. Just give us the money and let's do whatever we want. Yeah, it doesn't work like that. It never works like that. That's why we're always telling conservative governments and organizations, don't take any government money, because then the government gets to micromanage how you spend that money.
Yeah, and an example of a school that doesn't take any government money is Hillsdale College. So not only do they not accept any grants, no Pell grants, no research grants. They don't even accept government subsidized or government insured student loans. You have to get a free market based student loan to go to Hillsdale. Absolutely zero federal funding. And Hillsdale gets to do whatever it wants. Yeah. Right? And you have plenty of other schools too, like the Ivy Leagues, are sort of like a lefty haven. Those are private schools. They get federal funding, but they have so much private funding that if, Harvard, Yale, Brown, these Ivy Leagues that are being threatened to have their federal funding, withdrawn from them, they still have $50 billion endowments. They can continue business as usual for the next 50 years just by utilizing the funds in their endowment.
But that's a great example. Yeah, that's a great example, though, because, get rid of your DEI program or you lose your federal funding. That's the deal. You want federal funding, here you go.
Yeah.
And, yes, that's been a big controversy. And, so neither side is happy with this. And it's all, like I was just saying, it's always going to be the case when you take government money. With the UW, it's just, it's treated in part like a state agency. It's treated in part like an independent. It kind of has it both ways. It's very autonomous internally. Like, for example, like the UW system, every state agency, they don't get to just hire as many employees as they think they need. They have to go to the legislature. That's part of the state budget process.
Yeah.
UW is different. It is able to increase its staff as long as it can claim that it's not being funded with the GPR, with the state taxpayer money. It's being funded by our segregated accounts or tuition, whatever.
Yeah.
Which, anyone that's ever looked at budgets knows, well, okay, you just start shifting funds around, so.
Yeah. And for the UW budget, within the GPR section of Evers's proposal, he earmarked, I think, half of that for hiring new staff and faculty. So
Yeah, and even if the Fiscal Bureau or GFC pulls that out of the budget, doesn't give them that authorization, well, they could just shift money around and say, well, actually, that's now supported by tuition dollars and not GPR. So,
and understand too, folks, the composition of the employees in the UW system. It's either the ratio between faculty and staff is either 1 to 5 or 1 to 6. There are 5 or 6 administrators for every teacher. Like we're talking about huge administrative bloat.
Yeah.
This is unbelievable. And so if you're on the left and you're really, really concerned about, keeping the UW system in place as a publicly funded university system, and you want to extend access, extend the number of people that can go there, if you cut the funding in order to maintain, the level, the extent, the quality of education, they have to retain the number of faculty that they have, and they have to lay off those staff. You're not going to miss them. Seriously. And how much teachers listening to this, I was a teacher, I know this very well. How many bosses do you need to do your job well? Do you need 5? If you're in the public school system, you have that, and you know with certainty that every additional administrator that you have to report to makes your job twice as hard.
Oh, I want to say, like, with when it comes to like support staff,
Yeah.
It's like, oh, well, they need all that extra support. No, those 5 people aren't supporting the teachers to do their job better. Those 5 people are creating more work for those teachers.
Yes, exactly. So get rid of the staff. You reduce the cost of the UW system. You don't need it. And the way you get rid of the staff is cut the funding.
Yeah. So, bottom line, this dance that the state government and the UW system continually do, nobody's happy. Everyone's frustrated. Everyone's trying to, they're constantly trying to outmaneuver each other. Let's stop playing the games. They just privatize the UW, and all those problems go away.
And for the naysayers on the right, conservatives saying, well, that's pie in the sky, that's a pipe dream, you're not going to get. That is the ultimate goal. You have to keep that goal in mind. We are moving towards privatization. We're not, if I were a legislator and I'm, trying to privatize the UW system, I'm not going to probably write a bill that says abolish the UW system, amend the Constitution, we're no longer required to have a university system. It's going to be incremental. Okay, but incremental towards what? Towards that ultimate goal of separation between education and the state.
Yeah, and it's got to start with funding too, because right now they're just very independent, but they're still getting all the money. Yeah. So they got the independence first before they got the funds cut. So
no accountability.
Yeah. So anyway, all right. So moving on. GFC Democrats slam Republicans for slashing Evers's budget. That's kind of like their obligatory press release every budget cycle. Of course, they throw out the governor's budget, and they just start from where we're at right now. Governor Evers wants a $120 billion budget. That's a 20% increase in funding. My prediction is we're going to end up with a $110 or $111 billion biannual budget by the time this is all done, because that's what happens with incremental budgeting.
Yeah.
Budget analysis, we got 2 big reports out over the past week. We did children and families. After all, this is Governor Evers' The Year of the Kid. That includes a lot more money for the Head Start program and daycare subsidies. We at the MacIver Institute say cut both, zero them out. Head Start is a federal program that was started 60 years ago to give underprivileged children a head start on their elementary school education. Lots of reports out there say it has had zero impact on long-term educational outcomes, including from lefty think tanks. So all this comes out to is free daycare in the ghetto, and we do not need to be supporting that. Also, daycare subsidies. Evers wants to pour, hundreds of millions of dollars into propping up the daycare industry. This feeds into our larger point of whenever Governor Evers says pro-kid, he means anti-family. Daycares enable family, essentially enable families to have both parents working, spend as little time with their kids as possible. That is not conducive to a stable society. Governor Evers needs to be making proposals that will increase economic prosperity to enable families to have one parent stay at home and one parent to work. One parent staying at home with the kids means healthier, more well-adjusted kids. In Governor Evers' vision, kids go to daycare as soon as mom's maternity leave expires. Both parents back in the workforce paying taxes. Kids in government daycare until they hit elementary school. Then the government school system raises them from there. Mike, do you have any?
I do. So when Evers was talking about this, I forget the exact percentage that he gave, but during his State of the State address, he said 75% of a family's income has to go towards daycare.
Yeah, exactly. Like the calculations and
the math doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, the math that he was providing was essentially you have one parent working full time just to send their kid to daycare. So under that scenario, are you really that committed to working your crummy job rather than raising your kids?
Right, yeah. So the calculus made no sense. If you're really spending that much of your income on daycare, it makes sense to quit your job and stay at home.
Unless you hate your kids, I guess.
Unless you hate your kids.
And love your job.
I do have, an anecdote that, goes to this point. So my older sister, and I don't think she'll mind me saying this, and we get 100 viewers on these, so
don't use her name.
But my sister has 2 kids, and she works, and her husband works, and their situation, their kids are young, and their finances are such that they sort of have to work right now. Okay, so they send their kids to daycare. My sister told me that what they pay for daycare every month is more than their mortgage.
Wow.
Isn't that just boom?
Wow, you are really committed to not raising your kids.
So sister, quit your job or whatever.
Yeah.
But it's incredibly expensive, and the reason is that daycare is subsidized. If you subsidize something, it becomes more expensive, and you have to understand how the daycare system works, how the laws are written, which is that daycare, nothing against the people who work there, but daycare is a cartel, okay? The licensing requirements, the number of supervisors, employees that you have to have at a daycare per student or per kid is astronomical, and it just causes a huge amount of bloat. That's what makes it really expensive, right? So it's you have to have one teacher for every, depends where
you mean the
kids.
The administrative rules from DCF
kids.
makes it.
Yes. It's ridiculous. When you're in the public school system as a teacher, there is no faculty student ratio requirement. They'll put 30 kids in your class, 35, 40. They don't care. But daycare, right? You're talking about people with what's probably a high school education, maybe an AA or something like that, nursing, CPR certification. But then they have to get this license. And daycare used to be cheap. These people weren't making a lot of money. So they impose licensing requirements, jacks up the price, they get subsidies, and blah, 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 blah.
You know what? This is a great point. It's because, we were just talking about the admin rules and how, this lawsuit might mean that bureaucrats just have no oversight on how they write those things. Now, your average person doesn't, go to the state's website and look and reads over administrative rules.
Yeah.
You should, because honestly, that's affecting you a lot more than state laws. Mm-hmm. When you interact with government, it's usually in the form of an administrative rule. But you are never going to be able to reform this because, first of all, those administrative rules, a lot of them just don't make any sense. Some of them are really illegal. The lawmakers didn't really read them through very carefully when they first got passed. So a lot of them are illegal. Sometimes it's because laws were passed afterwards and they never revised the rules. You also have, some of them they can be really subjective. Sometimes they'll put in certain requirements, but then there's no penalty for not making those requirements, so it's just kind of meaningless. So the administrative rules are really, sometimes they'll contradict each other. So I don't know who writes these things. I don't know what back room, what employees got thrown into a working group to just throw good ideas around and put them into the code books. But that's kind of what it seemed like happened.
Yeah.
So, but here's the problem. It's about kids. You are never going to convince any lawmaker, oh my gosh, you mean kids might be less safe if I take away the requirements for how many daycare workers there are per kids? Non-starter, never going to happen. So that's where we get to we need to start defunding these agencies using the state budget process.
Yeah.
So anyway, let's see. All right, so yeah. This was all about the year of the kid. All right, so now moving on to transportation. Transportation is kind of taking the back seat this time around. Governor Evers wants to increase funding to it. That's natural. He always wants to put more money into it. Transportation is really important because political careers in Wisconsin can rise and fall with road funding. That's what happened to Governor Walker. In 2018, he ran for re-election. And the road building lobby is really powerful, and they were really ticked off at him because he refused to raise the gas tax, which essentially means more money in their pocket. So he did not raise the gas tax like they wanted to, so they decided to throw all their money and support behind Governor Evers. Something I always have to bring up here is the road builders were assisted by former Republicans, lifelong Republicans who now, had a vested interest in the road building lobby. They devised the whole Scott Holes campaign. Potholes. Do you have Scott Holes on your roads? So it was Tony Fix the Damn Roads Evers versus Scott Holes Walker, and Evers won over this. Governor Evers knows that his political career depends on keeping the road builders happy. That's why he made the top road lobbyists in the state his first Department of Transportation secretary. Very scandalous, but apparently nobody but the MacIver Institute thought this was a scandal.
Yeah.
So gas tax never happened, thankfully. And that's actually, but Governor Evers is still taking credit for fixing the roads. So real quick, one of the charts that we included in this report was Governor Evers' gas tax proposal. Because it's important, even though it didn't pass, it's important for people to realize what it would have meant to us today. Wisconsin's gas tax then and now continues to be 31 cents a gallon. So that blue line at the bottom of the screen is the gas tax rate as it is and was. Those bars that slowly climb up, that was Evers' plan for the gas tax. So right out of the gate, he wanted an 8 cents per gallon increase in the gas tax. And then he wanted to tie it to inflation afterwards. When we first calculated this, inflation was not rising at the rate that it wound up rising at.
Yeah.
Had Evers been successful, our gas tax in Wisconsin would currently be 48 cents a gallon. That is higher than Illinois'. This would have been the second highest gas tax in the country.
Yeah.
Because we just looked up California's.
Yeah, California has the highest state gas tax, 68 cents per gallon.
Yeah.
Illinois, second highest, 66.5 cents.
Oh, wait, that's got to have the federal. That's got the federal in there.
This one, I don't. This one, Tax Foundation.
Yeah, I think they're wrong then because I looked up the Illinois
This one
yeah.
is a little dated.
Yeah.
It's 24.
So anyway, 48 cents a gallon, a lot higher than it is now. And again, MacIver didn't make up that number. We got that straight from the Nonpartisan Legislative Fiscal Bureau. So you don't have to count on our math, even though our math came up with the exact same numbers. So.
And we're good at math too, by the way. I taught math. know a thing or two about arithmetic. It's very easy.
And we are really stubborn when it comes to figures too.
We're also just regular Americans who are capable of doing math.
Yeah.
If you graduated high school.
Yeah, it's not
before 2020
Yeah.
or whatever, you can probably do math.
So the math isn't complicated, but it takes we're passionate about it, so we make sure the numbers are right. We check them over and over again.
Yeah.
If we aren't comfortable about a number, it doesn't go in our reports. So just so you know, that's how we do things here.
And sorry,
Oh,
real quick.
sure.
So this tax foundation has like a little map of like the state gas taxes, and what they explain here is that there's the excise tax, and then they also include other taxes associated with gasoline. So I think that's why those numbers are different.
Okay, yeah, and I'm
Storage fees for
pretty-
that stuff's being
yeah.
lumped in.
I'm pretty sure I've got the link in my
But the
report
rankings
too.
are correct. California highest,
Okay.
Illinois second, and Wisconsin's middle of the road 20th.
Yeah, so we would have really jumped up.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure I've got the link to my source on that. So
But yeah,
sure to-
Wisconsin would be
yeah.
the second highest for sure.
be sure to read that report. Another thing that's in there is single bid contracts. So one of our policy positions is doesn't matter. More money for roads doesn't mean you get more roads or better roads. So there is this idea. There's and this doesn't just apply to roads. This applies to a lot of issues. People have this perception that if the government throws money at a problem, it fixes the problem. And roads is a great example of you throw money at the road problem, you think throwing more money at roads means you're going to get more road repairs. It doesn't, because you are making the assumption that there is infinite capacity to address these problems, and all you have to do is buy more of it. So with the road building industry, there is finite road building capacity. There are only so many thousands of road workers in the state of Wisconsin. Now, if one year you double the amount of money you're spending on roads, you aren't necessarily doubling the amount of road workers. You've got the same industry. They've got the same amount of equipment. They aren't, yes, they're always investing in, new equipment, trying to, keep the workforce up. But, it can't keep up with huge influxes of cash. And also, that's not permanent. So, I mean, you can't. In private industry, you've always got the how much capacity you add, and there's a risk to adding capacity. Money that's here today for capacity might not be there tomorrow, so you are always cautious about increasing your permanent capacity. So what does this all mean? This means that when you throw a ton of new money at a problem like roads, you just end up making roads more expensive. You don't really get more roads. Now, this is a position that MacIver has held for a very long time. This is one of our policy positions that we were insistent upon when we were fighting the gas tax mentality several years ago. Now, other groups around the country are starting to, sing the same song, sing the same tune. Illinois, they've pointed out that they've increased their road funding by like $2 billion over the past 10 years, and their roads keep getting worse and worse. $2 billion, like it's either, it like varies, but depending on where you look at on their timeline between increasing their road funding by 50% to 100%. So another one is logistics organizations, trade organizations, which obviously they care a great deal about roads. They pointed out that despite the $2 trillion that the federal government poured into infrastructure over the past several years, the quality of roads really didn't improve nationally. So other people are pointing this out right now. And more evidence to that is the DOT single bid contracts. This is something that we pay attention to because single bid contracts means non-competitive contracts. So when the state of Wisconsin throws out road projects to bid, this is the value of this is a number of contracts that come back with only a single bidder that they award. You can see that the bipartisan infrastructure law was passed in 2021, and look what happened in 2022. The number of these contracts exploded. These are non-competitive projects because there was more money than there was capacity. There weren't enough road construction companies to bid on the projects that were going out there, so what we got were non-competitive bids.
Yeah.
So,
And, You explained it well, Bill, but to make it more technical, the reason you can't just spend more and get more is because in economics we have a few terms, one being fixed capital and another being substitutability. So when you're talking about construction workers, yeah, you can take a construction worker who, only builds roads, and you could have him frame a house. You could have him build like a parking structure. He could do it, but he's still specialized in road building. So if you're going to spend more and actually hire more construction workers to build roads, you're going to be hiring sub-marginal construction workers who tend not to have the same level of experience in building that sort of thing. So
It's going to take them a lot longer.
it's going to take them longer. It's going to, they also additionally, they don't have the relationships with the necessary suppliers downstream in the supply chain, for tarmac and gravel or whatever else it is, right? Because they don't have those contacts, they don't have, a reputation with those suppliers of, being able to pay, or, they're not going to get like, a reduced rate for it because, you're not a repeat, buyer of what we're selling and that sort of thing. So you can't just move people around.
Mm-hmm.
Capital is not heterogeneous. Okay, it's not substitutable. Some of it is, but most of it is not.
Yeah, and one other, I make several points on this because I've been following transportation for a long time. So this is probably this is probably the best report I wrote for this budget cycle. I talk about contract reform. Why road projects are, some contract reforms that we need to do to make these projects a little bit a little bit more efficient. But ultimately, another concept that conservatives love the sound of is the private-public partnership. And in and that's exactly what the road construction industry is. You've got the public sector, all the civil engineers at DOT designing these projects and doing quality control and micromanaging them, all the project managers. And then you've got the private sector, which is the actual, the people that own the equipment and hire the workers to actually do the work. So in a conservative's mind, you hear private-public partnership and you think, oh, it's great. So you get the efficiency of private industry with the transparency of government. You actually get the opposite. You get the efficiency of government with the transparency of private industry. So this is another great example and evidence of that phenomenon.
Yeah, and I did a very unscientific poll, but not a meaningless poll last year. I sent out a survey to some construction workers. I had like 40 respondents, so
yeah, it's not bad.
It's not too bad. It's 30 more, and it would be statistically significant, T distribution and all that stuff. But I asked if you had the choice between working a public job or a private job, assuming all else equal, right? It's the exact same project,
same pay.
Same pay. The difference being that it's either private or it's public. Which would you rather do? And a supermajority said private. And then in this poll, they could write comments and give feedback. The guy said that the public jobs are a nightmare because of the oversight. Mm-hmm. You have to deal with, permitting and all of that stuff, which you would normally have to do. But when it's a public job, you then have the engineers, right? The state engineers have to view everything. And if it's an interstate highway project, then you have the state engineers, and now you have the feds on top of that. So you have to deal with two bureaucracies at the same time. And it's a lot of downtime. You're usually paid really well, right? In Wisconsin, supposedly you're not being paid, prevailing wage or something like that. It's not even desirable for the workers. Yeah. No one wants to be paid to sit around and do nothing. Like, it sounds good, but once you're actually in that position, it's pretty miserable.
So just real quick, that goes into prevailing, talking about prevailing wage. So that was a really great reform that was passed 10 years ago that you could almost count on the liberal Supreme Court overturning. But prevailing wage is, a very artificial way that the government uses to calculate what labor needs to be paid on for public construction jobs.
Yeah.
It sounds great. It's like, yeah, sometimes you end up making a lot more than you would otherwise if you're a carpenter, so let's say you're making, oh, wow, this is a great job. I'm making $50 an hour. Yeah. Guess what? They recalculate it every year. And you have no idea where it's going. So it's like one year you might be making $50 an hour, and the next year you might be making $15 an hour. Nobody wants that. Nobody wants to live in a, bust and boom and bust, feast or famine industry. Nobody wants that type of career. So, this is, when that goes away, some years it might be great. Other years you guys might be wishing that prevailing wage were back.
And the
prevailing wage, was no longer in effect.
And the main thing, this has been an ongoing research project for Bill and I. Just so much else has happened, we haven't been able to go back to it. But with public-private partnerships, it's actually a very simple solution. Okay, how do you fund public projects? Okay, without the mess of super high costs and time overruns and blah, 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 right? Yeah. All of that stuff. And the answer, again, is that you privatize it. So the state or a county, whoever it is, says, we want a road built, okay? Bid on this project, and someone bids on it, okay? Yeah. And whoever has the lowest price or, whoever has the best deal, they win the bid. But now, the state then says, great, take out a loan to finance it. When you finish this project and you actually deliver it, then we'll pay you what you
that's right.
for your bid.
Yeah.
And that's how you do it. And the reason this works is because now the road builder or whoever it is, the contractors, they get their pressure from the private sector, from the banks, from the financiers, and they are not going to let anyone default. Okay? So you have the private sector putting that pressure on them. Whereas now it's baked into the law that for capital projects, if you win the bid, you have the lowest bid, you are permitted to go 10% over your original bid, no questions asked. It will not go up for review. The building commission won't even look at it. You have to have cost overruns in excess of 10% in order for the commission to review that project. Private sector is not going to allow that. Yeah. And also, if you have a loan that you have to pay back, you want to pay it back as soon as possible because you don't want to allow interest to continue to accumulate, right? And then you don't have to worry about, cost plus profit, which is the current formula for doing that. It's if you bid $100 million to build this freeway for us and you end up doing it for 40, great, the difference is yours.
That's right. That's mine where I know you focus more on like the financing, and then I focus on the contract reform. But, it's great because, people like to say, oh, there's no easy answers. No, politics makes things complicated. There's lots of easy answers, and contract reform, financing requirements. Yeah, these are like easy answers. So it'd be great to see the politicians actually embrace them.
And we have a huge amount of historical precedent for this. For the first however many decades of America's existence, every road was privately funded and privately built.
Yeah, that's right.
If you were pulling your wagon down the road, you had a toll collector, and he charged you based off the width of the rut that you would leave in your road. Here in Wisconsin and in Michigan, we had plank roads. Same thing, privately built, because you're going through marsh and swamp and quagmires.
A lot of them are still there too with asphalt over them.
Yeah.
All right, moving on. Immigration enforcement. This is another of those hot topics that's not just that Wisconsin finds itself in the national headlines over. So we've got 4 stories over the past couple weeks. Wisconsin's liberal leaders stand against the rule of law. This was a was this? I think this is a Dan O'Donnell piece, but it really succinct. It was Dan O'Donnell wrote this one. So this it really did a good job of summarizing the some of the episodes that have been going on here. Yeah. So we've got on I think it was Good Friday, Governor Evers sent out a memo telling all state employees not to cooperate with ICE which she is trying to deny, even though it's actually in writing. You have the Milwaukee Circuit Court judge, Hannah Dugan. She got arrested for helping a criminal defendant escape ICE. And then you've got the Dane County Sheriff ignored a ICE hold detainer on a violent offender, got them out, and would not give ICE the GPS coordinates of the person. So you got that one now, too. So yeah, 3 big national stories, all from Wisconsin. Thank you very much. Wisconsin liberals love to be in the news over this type of stuff. Governor Evers, so last week on Thursday, you had Tom Homan, the border czar, pretty much say that we're coming after public officials that knowingly violate the law, that are obstructing federal justice. And Governor Evers found himself in the crosshairs because the Gateway Pundit reporter asked specifically about him, and Tom Homan said, just wait, just wait. So Governor Evers then on Friday put out a video response. I've never encouraged or directed anyone to break any laws.
Yeah. We have those linked in that article, by the way.
Yeah, both the Tom Homan and the Governor Evers response.
I think you added those because I didn't.
Yeah, you had the Evers one. I figured people would want to see Homan too. So that video on Evers was just so telling. And I talked all about this with Meg Elfson on WSAU on Monday, because I'm in a weird sense, I'm always seeing Governor Evers' praises. I think he is a very effective leader for the left. I think he has assembled a crack team around himself. He has been delivering results for the left his entire time in office. He is essentially, he's rewriting the state constitution through the courts. Like, he is like just sucking all the power away from the legislature and consolidating it in the executive branch. It's really impressive. He's the most dangerous governor in the country. But that video, I mean, he came across as a sniveling coward. Like, after I watched that video, I'm thinking, I'm always saying, don't let Governor Evers with this kind of, meek look and, elderly appearance, fool you. The guy's he's a tough guy. No, he's not a tough guy. He's just really brave in a crowd. When he's standing with all of his liberal allies, he's got the media forming a protective circle around him. He's a real tough guy. When the prospect of him going to jail for something came up, oh my gosh, you saw a completely different Governor Evers. Like, just, trying to explain himself. Oh, I'm not a crook. I didn't do anything. Shaking in his boots. So, I mean, it was like an incredible just look into Governor Evers' true character. After I saw that video, I'm thinking, when a big schoolyard fight happens, there's always the coward after the fight's over and the poor, the person that lost is on the ground, crumpled up. Governor Evers is that the nerd, that dork that walks up afterwards and gives it one final kick to say that he helped.
Yeah.
So really brave in a mob, but real coward, when it comes to being out there on his own. And it was a real political miscalculation too. I mean, if I were in his shoes, I would have said something like, it would have been a 5-second video. Real quick, the video was like 3.5 minutes long of him, don't throw me in jail, I didn't do anything wrong.
Yeah.
It should have been 5 seconds. It should have been, this message is for Donald Trump. Come and get me. Or, something like that. Bring it on.
Would have skyrocketed.
Yeah. Hey, Tom Homan, bring it on.
So,
I mean, that would have been his campaign ad.
Yeah. So it makes you wonder, what kind of phone calls did he get?
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah. What?
I'm sure someone put the fear of God into him.
Yeah.
Behind closed doors to elicit this sort of reaction from him.
Yeah, and I'll tell you. I mean, look, we know how Wisconsin voters react to different things. If they arrest Governor Evers for something that he did in his official capacity as governor, this isn't like Rod Blagojevich, taking bribes and lining his pockets. I mean, this is I am the governor of the state of Wisconsin. I'm issuing this guidance. These things always play out the same way in court. If that guidance was illegal, a judge says, that guidance was illegal, you have to retract that guidance.
Yeah.
You don't go to jail as a public official for doing something in your official capacity, as a public official. So zero risk of him honestly going to jail and becoming a felon over this. But he could have got a great campaign ad out of it, though.
But don't you think the reason for that is that, say they do arrest him, there's, criminal charges or civil, whatever it is, criminal charges brought against him. The entire Wisconsin administrative state now is subject to the discovery process.
Oh!
So by coming out and saying what he did, it's him saying, okay, implicitly, we're doing a lot of shady things behind closed door. If I don't put this out now, then they will have, all of the reason that they would need in order to make an arrest and for a judge to actually hear a case about Wisconsin immigration policy.
Yeah.
Don't you think?
Yeah, that could be it. I mean, those are all public records, supposedly, but it'd be a lot easier to get at them than that. But, I don't know. I don't know what phone calls he got. Maybe his chief of staff, who's like, is the supposedly the brains of the operation. Maybe she was on vacation, or But I still think, that would have been a really smart campaign ad. And voters in Wisconsin, one of the reasons that we heard why they voted for a complete liberal supermajority on the Wisconsin Supreme Court, they don't care about constitutional government. They don't. A lot of people that voted for her, was just, oh, well, you got Donald Trump on the federal level that's really going on a rampage, so we need to balance him out on the state level. Yeah. So if Donald Trump had Tony Evers arrested, Tony Evers would have just won in a landslide. Mm-hmm. So, this is a good point too for everyone on our side that is saying, oh yeah, I can't wait to see Governor Evers arrested. You know what, Governor Evers, if he gets arrested, if he gets a mugshot, if he gets that picture of the Trump administration arresting him, that's his third term. Slam dunk, no question. So
yeah, hopefully he retires though. I don't understand.
He's not that old. He's not that old.
He's like what, 70 what?
70, like early 70s.
Dude, that's old. Like, why? I don't understand why these old folks want to stay in government for so long. Like, I've never heard anyone say like, "Oh, I love it." Yeah. Like, why would you want to spend your golden years in this system? Like, I don't get it. You have nothing going. Do you have no private life? Nothing going on?
Yeah, but you and I aren't the types that we would ever go for public office in the first place. So, there's something about it. The power is addicting, the sense of importance. I think he's like 73 right now, so he'll be 77, 78 when he finishes his third term. That's not... I don't know. Biden was, 81?
Yeah, average life expectancy for men in America, though, is like 78.
Yeah.
Like, so he really wants to run the average, right? That's half. So he wants to run the risk of like dying in office. Who wants to do that? I just don't understand. So I understand it's not important, but
what are you going to do? What are you going to do in retirement? You're going to go on vacation. What's he doing now? He's going on vacation. He just got back from Germany. We wrote a big story about how he went to Japan with he took his wife to Japan on a supposed trade mission, and all that and the end result was trade with Japan suffered.
I guess the only thing I can imagine is that the position of governor is much more ceremonial than maybe I think it is. Well, it's probably the case.
Yeah, you take your afternoon naps. When important Democrats come into town, you go out for ice cream. I don't know. I think he's got a pretty nice job, pretty nice gig. And he's got the media that always circles the wagons around him to keep him safe.
But even still, okay, even if it's like a cushy job, you get to do all your vacations and whatnot. I would just be annoyed and constantly like angry at the fact that people are just gonna be yelling at me whenever I'm out in public. Maybe conservatives are too nice.
You've never been to the governor's mansion, have you?
No.
It's right on the lake.
Never been invited.
Well, it's right on the lake. It's
which lake?
I think Mendota.
Oh, no idea.
I don't know. They're Mendota. Anyway, it's right on the lake. People are yelling at you. You come home at 2:00 in the afternoon. You've put in your full day, Governor Evers' full day. Mm. You get yourself a bowl of ice cream. You sit out on your picnic table and you stare off into the lake, and everything's quiet and serene. You're in a really nice, liberal neighborhood. Nobody's screaming at you. There's no bullhorns in the streets. So I don't know. It sounds nice to me. But all right. What else we got? So we had 4 stories altogether. So we talked about Governor Evers' video. We got Make no mistake, Hannah Dugan is a criminal. That was a Dan O'Donnell video. And then we got Richard Moore talking about the mantra of due process. Democrats really care about due process when it involves their agenda. They don't care about due process at all, though, when it benefits conservatives or people that aren't in their main constituencies. All right, finally, political lawfare. This is. I just want to talk about this really briefly at the end here because we're getting bits and pieces. And MacIver, we really like to consolidate things and make lists for people so that you can get the full picture. Because otherwise, you just see, today Governor Evers just issued another press release saying that they're suing the government, the President Trump over electronic vehicle funding, and then you're like, wait, how many more have there been? Yeah, so far I'm tracking 4 over the past couple weeks. We have suing the Department of Education, or the Trump administration, for wanting to dismantle the Department of Education, suing over defunding AmeriCorps, suing over HHS changes, suing over DOT. Sometimes they're suing over just rumors. They're suing before they even know what's going on.
Fact, folks, fact. There have been no cuts. Everything Doge is doing, it's not official. None of it's happened. So all of this is just speculative.
Well, and like when Doge is, earmarking things to be cut.
Right.
They aren't like saying, don't give this money to the states. No, it's, we found $1 billion that is going to some non-government organization in a third world country that's nobody from America. There aren't even any Americans that are signing the checks. Yeah, that type of stuff. Like what's this charge on my credit card? I don't remember ever going to Kenya. Yeah. That's the type of stuff that we're talking about. So,
they get all in a tizzy. The main thing is Medicare, right? Because Doge is finding a bunch of fraudulent Medicare beneficiaries.
Yeah.
Who are just people that don't exist.
Yeah. So.
And it's been blown out of proportion, and twisted, distorted, lied about that. Grandmas are being kicked off.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. So fraudulent payments in Medicare to non-Americans, not in America, and Tammy Baldwin goes and convinces your grandma that they're going to cut they're going to cut her off of Medicare.
And everything else is really, really frivolous. Like the National Endowment for the Arts. A bunch of people on the left are pissed about potentially just cutting that entirely. National Endowment for the Arts gets $200 million a year, and they're like, oh my gosh, we're not going to have any art. The private sector, I think, spends $6 billion on art every year. If you get rid of the NEA, you're not going to notice the difference at all.
Yeah.
All it does is, props up what are objectively really bad artists.
Well, and they've got, the left has they've clearly staked out their strategy for how to deal with Trump. It's oppose them everywhere.
Yeah.
So, no rest, just every single issue, you got to get out a crowd. So whenever there's a protest, if there's 50 signs, they're on 50 different issues.
Yeah, it's really, the lawsuits are really silly. It's pretty much all optics. There's a slight chance that, someone somewhere wins one because it goes to the Supreme Court or whatever, or you just get in the right district court, and apparently a single judge can just declare that the president's action is unconstitutional and just stop everything, which is the definition of tyranny, a single person saying that you can or cannot do something. But if it goes to the Supreme Court, okay, you have a bit of a chance because you got Roberts, who's sort of wishy-washy on this stuff, but these people understand that they don't really have a chance. The federal government's not going to rule against itself. Did the Wisconsin government rule against itself? The Supreme Court just said that the governor can strike out individual characters. Why wouldn't they make that ruling? They're all part of the same cartel.
Yeah.
Right? The founders talked about this a whole lot. John Taylor, Jefferson, all of these guys saying that a judicial branch probably isn't a good idea. It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense that we're going to create an institution, a branch of government, that is going to be a part of that very same government, which will have the final say on whether, government's actions are legal.
Yeah, you're right.
It doesn't make any sense.
It's not really a co-equal branch because, it gets the final say. What
Yeah.
what is the check and balance on from the executive to the judiciary? What is the check and balance from the legislative? Okay, so the legislature can cut off your funding. No, they really can't, because then the court will just rule that you don't have the authority to
You
cut off
can't
our
do that.
funding.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense.
So,
No sense.
all right. So covered a lot today. 3 big topic areas. Things are always crazy here in Madison. We're right in the heat of the session, the budget, and everything else that's going on the national level. So anyway, a bit of a long one for us today, about an hour long. So thanks for everyone that stuck with us to the end. Thank you very much for being with us on the MacIver Report. This is May 9th, 2025. I'm Bill Osmolsky, and I was joined by Mike Lucas, and we look forward to catching up with you next time. Have a great weekend.
See ya.